BCA 101 Introduction to Computers and Information Systems. We are working on computer systems in detail. This happens to fall in Unit 3, and what we did was we discussed these particular topics. We discussed hardware in detail, talked about the different things, we talked about what operating systems are going to run on that hardware, and then what applications run with that operating system on the hardware. What we did then is we looked at this from this point of view, from what I would call bottom up. But in reality, in the computing world, even though a lot of people do it this way, they figure out what kind of hardware they want, and then what are we going to put on the hardware. You really should do it in this particular fashion here. What you need to do is to know what task you want to accomplish. And what would accomplish our task when we're talking about computing devices? Well, that would be the software. And we've mentioned this before about software. So, under applications, you know what you want to accomplish. For example, if you want a game, then you got to figure out what type of gaming software you want. Okay? So, how can we categorize that? Let's do this. Let's break it down in what we've talked about before. So we have productivity software, and that would be things like Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office is productivity software, and it has those various packages. So we can do word processing, we can do spreadsheets, we can do some database work, you can do graphics, you can do presentations from productivity software. This would be a horizontal type of software, software that could be used in all of our businesses. So one particular option would be productivity software. Now another option of what we can do is we can buy software. You can buy a package. And nowadays you hear the term apps. We can have a particular app do what we want it to do. There are a lot of apps out there. Unbelievable number of apps of what you want to do. So you can buy a package, a piece of software to do what you want to do. And we're going to give it one more category then here. We're going to go ahead and say custom, or whatever you might want to call this. This would be where you could design and code your software. So this happens a lot in the world. Design and code your own software. So let me reiterate, we can use productivity software, which we're learning a lot about in our classes. You could buy some apps. You could actually write some of your own apps to do what you wanted to do. And hopefully we understand, probably you could use a whole combination of these different types of software. Now, a couple other terms I'm going to throw in here right now. This software can be proprietary. Could be proprietary software, or open source. Okay, Could be proprietary or open source. Again, proprietary software. Somebody owns the rights to it. Open source, the source code, this whole concept of coding software, is open. People can change and adjust it and so forth. Most people think of proprietary software you spend more money on. Open source software tends to be free. So we can keep that in mind too, in what you're trying to do. Now, we're not done with software yet. The next thing we want to mention is where is it? That may sound crazy. We make that comment. Where is the software? Okay? Here's what I'm talking about. You can have your software, you can have it on your device. Okay? So you can actually have that software on your device. You can have the software on a server. Maybe like a client server environment, so it could be on a LAN, a local area network in your area. So that's another option. Or, everybody should know what I'm going to type next. It could be a service. In the cloud. So you could have software as a service in the cloud. And you could, depending on the company, you could pay for that, or in some cases it might be free. I believe it's important to know if your app is on your device, you're getting it from a network, or you're getting it from the internet. Do you see the difference? Get it from the internet. All right. So you pick out all the different software you want. The next thing you have to do, you may or may not know this, you have to figure out what operating system the software is going to run on. That might seem obvious to some of you, not so obvious to a lot of people. Let's take a look. Let's take a look here, what I'm talking about. So, if you want to run, let me give you an example here. If you want to run Microsoft Office, let's say the productivity software Office, like we're running in class. If you want to run Office, well, Office is a Microsoft product. It's proprietary. Okay, so it's proprietary. So what do you need? You need Windows. Okay, and then there's always an issue with which version. Okay, so a lot of people are running Windows 7 right now, and 8's available now, and who knows when 9 will be available. Okay, so we can run Windows operating system. So the software you picked then would all run on Windows, because Windows would be your operating system. We're going to look at some other options here too. Let's look at the next one. The next one might be you might own a Macintosh, or you have software that you like that's going to run on a Mac OS. Maybe OS 10. Alright, so let's put that here in our list. So if you like a package like for your productivity software, easy one to use as an example, if you like using pages and numbers, those are Macintosh software, you say, well, this stuff's really cool, and you might like a certain other type of software that runs on a Mac, then that software then would force you into getting a computer that runs this particular operating system. Now, the third one here we're going to mention, if we're into this idea of open source, right here, if we're interested in open source, then our next option then would be Linux or some other similar open source software. Okay, Linux is an open source operating system. You can go in and adjust and change the source code of it, and it's free. You don't have to pay anything for it. So what we have here, 3 good examples. If you're looking for software for some type of a, you have software that has certain characteristics, and these could be 3 different operating systems that that software could run on. So let me use again the example of productivity software. OpenOffice. You can buy OpenOffice to run on Linux operating system. Alright. 2 more to go though. Let's take a look here. Let's look at some more operating systems. You might be interested in iOS. Apple or Android. Android operating system. These would be, if you're thinking more so, on mobile devices. So you might have software up here where we're talking about, you might have some type of application software that would best work if ran on a mobile device that would run one of these 2 operating systems. Plus there would be other options down the line. Now that we've got what software we want to run and an operating system to run it, these things will really start to narrow down what kind of hardware. Okay, so the first thing would be, if we think about, are we going to have some type of PC, a laptop, a tablet? Can we do it on a smartphone? Can we do it on a smartphone? Alright. So we have what we might decide on what kind of device we'd actually use for the software. Now you'll notice I left off of here things like mini computers, mainframes, supercomputers, maybe servers. So we're thinking more of the devices we use to communicate or to run software in order for us typically to be used without going into the other parts of that. So now let's take a look here. What things to consider. Somewheres in that computer, somewheres in there is a processor, There is memory. There is some type of clock speed, the megahertz. That we need to consider, and then there'll be all different ways to connect or not connect different items to the computer. Okay? So, let's take a look and briefly talk about these. We know, or we should know, that all this stuff here affects the performance of our device. You know, what type of processor, how much memory you have, what clock speed the computer's functioning at, and then what things and how we're going to connect things to the computer. All of this communication running through the computer communicates through some type of bus. You know, some type of electronic bus that allows us to communicate through the computer. Some of these details would be important to know, and some not. Or not as important for somebody who's looking at picking out the right device. Okay? So let's do an example very briefly. So let's say your task up here is to play games and play a high-end games. So you would then figure out what games you want to play. You know, you want to play Angry Birds, and you're going to play them on your iPhone, okay? Or are you going to play some more sophisticated game in which you need to run that game on a Windows system, maybe? And then the game would determine, you're going to run Windows, and you figure out you're going to do it on a PC rather than a laptop or tablet or smartphone. And then that would determine, you know, in order for the game to run efficiently, would determine what processor, how much memory you're going to need, how fast you'd need it to work, and then what things you need to connect. You know, do you need a large, for example, do you need a large hard drive? You need a large hard drive in order to store the game and all that information. And does that have to be local, or can that be remote, and so forth? So these particular things, by the way, these would all be connected. This would all be connected here on a motherboard or some circuitry within the device. Connecting in a lot of things. You know, you have ports. Are you going to connect in? Do you have to connect in to a network, or can you do it all Wi-Fi? So do you need a USB? Do you need a port like a HDMI? Do you need FireWire based on what software? Let's say you're doing lots of video editing and your camera has a FireWire, and so you're going to use some software to edit your video, and that software happens to have to run on a Mac. You know, there's tons of examples. So then your computer would need a FireWire connection right here in order to be able to connect your camera to your computer. So it all stems off of, I told you a million times already, what do you want to accomplish? And then what are you going to use to accomplish that? I got a couple other hardware items we have to cover. Okay, so usually then you need to look at, somewhere here, you're going to look at this. Yep. I don't know. Whoops. See if I can type. Alright. Storage. What kind of storage are you going to use? And so then what are the options there? Okay, so let's take a look. We, in computers, we could have solid state. That's where nothing spins. An example of solid state storage is like flash. A student mentioned the other day you can buy, I'm not an expert on this necessarily, but you could buy a Mac laptop with a solid state storage. So instead of having a hard drive, like a hard drive I show here with a spinning platter in there, it doesn't. It just, all the memory inside the device is solid state. Why don't all computers have that? Kind of expensive yet at this point in time. Kind of expensive. So you might have magnetic storage. Really popular, you know, a hard disk. I love drawing these little hard disks. So you might have, in this case, you might have a little big or a little hard drive, okay? And depending on your situation, you know, when we talked about connecting, if you have a USB port, you can connect another hard drive to your device and have lots of storage that way. Another option here would be optical. And that's where we talked about before a little bit. That would be your DVD, or in some older computers, your CD. So you have optical storage. The next thing, where is the storage? You know, kind of like I talked up here, where is the software? Okay. Where is the storage? Is the storage going to be in the device? So, where is the storage? Is that storage going to be in the device, for example? So you would have to then, if it's in the device, you'd have to figure out how much you need and so forth. If it's in the device, you could have it on a server. So you could store it on a server. You know, like on a local area network, you could have some type of a server, and then you could store it on a local area network. Or finally, you could have your storage cloud. Okay, so you could have some cloud type storage in which it's stored in the cloud. Now, if you're going to store it in the cloud, you need access to the cloud, so you need access to the internet. You got to have some access to an internet service provider wherever you are. All right. So you get some type of cloud service to do that for you. Now, let's summarize all of this. We are doing a project for Unit 3. That project, we started out, that project has people divided up as groups, and they are looking at hardware. Okay. On that hardware, they need to specify what operating systems are running on that hardware. On the hardware, they should indicate what kind of processor, how much memory the hardware has, clock speed. Probably don't have to worry about that for smartphones, but if they're talking about PCs and laptops, they should. And then what kind of things can we connect to the device? Okay, and we were going high-end and low-end equipment in PCs and laptops. Tablets, smartphones, we were just going with whatever is most common. We need to list what operating system's running on it, what version. We need to indicate that. And then we also need to indicate what type of applications and so forth are running on it. What type of apps. So, in this case, here's what we have. We have some user, and we were very generic. We have some user, and that user wants to communicate to an app, and that app then communicates with an OS, an operating system, which communicates with hardware. And we have the little picture where we talk about that. All right. So that is a summary of Unit 3. And that's it.